hit subscribe. Subscribe to my guy, Uncle D. Tell him Big Bass sent you.
Spurling. I'm an attorney here in Houston, Texas, an advocate for black men, largely because I am a black man. I'm a black father, I have black sons. Hey man, I do what I do.
Brother Spurling. Brother Spurling met his fiance in my mixed group, and she was doing her thing, Ivy League educated, beautiful sister. He's a successful attorney. Now he's like, shh, that's my wife. I'm gonna put her through law school. She's gonna become an attorney at my practice. That's the kind of shit I'm talking about. I want to call you back to the sister that called into my show who said, well,
yeah, shout out to everybody. Excuse the language. We trying to run a family-friendly broadcast. Sorry, Grandma. I'm sorry. Daddy, I'm sorry. I apologize. Anyway, welcome to the broadcast. Shout out to everybody. Now that I have your attention, I'd like to thank everybody for coming into the broadcast. And I'd like to first say good evening. Big shout out to 5-4 Effect. Look, man, there's a lot of black people out there that said we were better off segregated. Are you kidding me? Right? Right. And then when I first heard that, I was like, nah, nobody's going to, roll with that. But then now, it's a lot of people who actually are running with that notion. And I have, of course, lots of videos to prove that. But let me say this up front. This message is not for everybody. This is for black people who keep saying we're better off back then. We were better off during segregation, or parroting the racist aspects of this, conservative movement. Really, it's not really a conservative movement. It's really kind of like a revitalized white supremacist, make America great again is just a cover word for make America good for white people again. But you need to understand what they're actually asking for. And if you believe that, you're historically illiterate and you're insulting every black man and every black woman who fought and bled and got jailed and got beaten and got unalived, okay, just to drag us out of that condition. Now, when people, especially the white far right and what we call the MAGA crowd. Now, again, in spirit, I have no problem with making America great. I just have a problem with what they mean, okay? What do you mean by that? Make America great for who, okay? And they know exactly what I'm talking about, and they should. What they really are talking about is the 1950s. And just so I know everybody in here is listening, write the 1950s, okay? That's the era that they're talking about. Life was great in the 1950s if you were a white man. If you weren't, especially if you were black, it was controlled. It was a nightmare. You were expected to survive quietly, okay? The 1950s were so economically prosperous, the sociologists actually believed America was headed toward becoming what was called a classless society. And that doesn't mean degenerate. They mean there was no class differentiation and everybody was rich, okay? By the 1950s, about 60% of the US households were middle class, and the median household income doubled between 1945 and 1960. But that wealth didn't come from virtue. It came from circumstance. It was powered by US manufacturing dominance. It was powered by strong unions, which artificially propped up wages, even for people who didn't really deserve it. It was propped up by the GI Bill of 1944 and taxing the rich people at 90%. And in this regard, it was people who made more than 400,000 were taxed at 90%. Okay, and that was done under President Harry S. Truman and Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, here's the truth that nobody likes to say. America was great because the rest of the world was broke. Europe was in rubble. Japan was flattened. China had survived a civil war in 1949 and wasn't an economic player. And for a brief freak moment in human history, America was the only industrial country standing. And that moment was artificial. It was temporary, and it's never coming back. Okay? Money flooded the US economy because there was nowhere else to invest. America controlled manufacturing, labor, trade, and finance by default. But the second the rest of the world recovered, that advantage disappeared. And now here's where the fantasy really falls apart, because none of that prosperity, none of it applied to Black people. So before you open your mouth and say we were better off segregated, you need to be ready to confront exactly what you're asking for. You got to be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, as I said, none of this financial success applied to Black people during the 1950s. Approximately 55% of Black Americans live below the poverty line. 55%. Now, that doesn't mean that 45% were rich. It means the rest were hovering around poverty and teetering. And there was a small number who was doing okay, and even an even smaller sliver which were genuinely wealthy. But here's the cold part about it. Because of segregation, everybody lived in the ghetto. Now, among those few who were wealthy, many of that was tied to entertainment and sports, and many of them were being systematically cheated out of their money through exploitative contracts, segregation, redlining, and a lack of meaningful legal protection. Ownership, inheritance, capital accumulation, and real engines of wealth. That was closed off to Black people, not only by law, but by custom. So when someone says, when a Black person says, okay, they want to make America great again, what they're really saying is they want us to return to being broke. Okay? That's what they want for us. When white people said that means they want to return back when there was global devastation after World War II, and one that never included Black people as beneficiaries in the first place regarding that financial prosperity. And to understand that, you have to zoom out, okay? In the 1920s, there was no official poverty, but poverty among Black Americans was rampant. And during the so-called Roaring 20s, over 40% of all Americans were broke. They were in poverty. And Black people were disproportionately concentrated in that 40%. So in the 1920s, the majority of us, the vast majority of us were broke. We were farmers, we were sharecroppers, which means you had to get up and work because nobody else would hire you. You were a domestic, which means you cooked and cleaned for white folks. That means you were out, that means ladies. What that means is that translates to domestic. That means you clean white people's dirty toilets. That's what you mean. It means you washed white women's dirty panties after that Aunt Flo came to visit. That's what that means, okay? Black man, what that means is you mop floors, you wash cars. This is what you did, especially in the South, where agriculture was already in depression throughout the decade. And the racial wealth gap was enormous. Black people, we had to deal with low wages. We dealt with exclusions from unions, so our wages weren't protected. They could pay you whatever want, and you had to worry about racial violence, which included the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. And then you had limited access to education, and what that did was it ensured that the next generation would not be economically mobile. So even W.B. Du Bois observed at the time, he said America's experienced, prosperity for some and depression for others. And when he said others, he was referring to the Negro, the colored man, and the colored woman. All right. Now, fast forward to the 1950s. This is this nostalgic era that we're talking about. Everybody wants to romanticize. Well, by 1955, the first year the U.S. Census Bureau formally measured poverty, the official poverty rate for Black people was 55.1%. That means we were broke. It's the highest rate recorded of any time. They want you Black people to return back, okay, to the 1950s during segregation, when we had the highest rate of poverty. No cell phones for you, no ladies, no weave, no extensions, no eyebrows, fellas, no shoes, no cars, nothing. That's what they want you to return back to. Segregated housing, which means you got to go move back in next door to your cousin, Pookie and Ray Ray. Pookie on one side, Ray Ray on the other side, with your Ivy League degree. You were excluded from home ownership in the suburbs. You had to go to crappy schools. You're going to have to deal with job discrimination. You will not be able to unionize. Okay. And this is what, and Black Americans were locked out. So Black people were all around. We were around the money. Somebody type around the money in the chat room. We were around the money, but we didn't have the money. Okay. That's like being at the dinner table, but you can't eat. Is that what y'all want to be? Somebody type "Make America Great Again." That's what they mean. The 1950s. Somebody type 1950s in the chat room. Now, you know, we were near the wealth. We were the laborer. We weren't the owners of it. We worked in the factories. We cleaned people's houses. We watched white people count their money. We cooked their food. We couldn't eat it. We raised their children and watched them go to Harvard and Yale and all that. We laid the bricks on their nice houses. You see what I'm saying? We helped harvest their crops and whatnot. We was out there picking cotton and everything. Yo, you see, we help make white America comfortable. That's what white people mean when they say "Make America Great Again." Because see, we were structurally blocked out from accumulating any wealth for ourselves. So yes, Black people had to sit back and watch white people live it up. Okay, white people were able to get GI bills and mortgages in the 1940s and 50s, and the Black veterans who fought in World War II got denied because, see, the GI Bill was administered locally. Most Black people lived down south, and the people in charge of distributing the GI Bill was the same racist white people you left when you went off to war. So when you came back, no, we're gonna deny you. You don't qualify. So you had to go straight back to your old slave master's great grandson, and he just go, nah, you're not gonna get anything. You see? So when white families moved to newly built suburbs like Levittown that started around 1947, Black families basically stayed in the hood. You stayed in the urban ghettos. It's right there. Never went in. You GI Bill my butt. You staying right here. Okay? This is what happened to us. All right. So we were close enough to see the prosperity, but we were locked out from touching it. They saw white men and white women and nice houses and build equity and send their kids off to nice colleges and take nice vacations. And well, I mean, we had TV so we could see it, but they retired on their pensions. But Black families rented. We had to rent it. We were redlined. We couldn't get loans. Worked multiple jobs, passed down absolutely nothing. And, the wealth was circulating around us, but it wasn't coming through us. And this is a key distinction that this nostalgia ignores. So when people say "Make America Great Again" and returning to greatness of the 1950s, they're really asking for a return to a time when white people had money and Black people were broke. Okay, that's what they want to do. And I'm not really trying to be broke. Now, speaking of not being broke, Black people are a lot richer in 2026. Okay, we are a whole lot better off in 2026. So when Black people say that we were doing better in the 1950s, they usually support that belief by saying that more Black people were married at the time. And I'm gonna deal with that later, okay? But that's not why it happened. The truth is, before that, Black people were already building and doing fine relative to where we started, and that was enslaved, uneducated, and locked out of opportunity. We kind of started making our own way. And we were not married at such high rates in those earlier periods, at least not marriages that were recognized by law, because we had Black people that were married during slavery, but they could just sell you off. In addition to that, by the 1960s, the Black poverty rate was still at 60%. I want you to understand, okay? 60% of everybody around you was living below the poverty line. And so when people say Black people were better off during segregation, they're not looking at the entire picture. They're just cherry picking a moment and ignoring the larger economic reality. Now let's fast forward to 2026. As it stands right now, in 2026, black people are a lot richer. And when I say a lot richer, understand this. We went from a 60% poverty rate or 55.1% poverty rate to 18 to 21%. 18. So we went from 60% of us to basically 4/5 of us, or more than over 80% of us living above the poverty rate. You understand what I'm saying? Because right now it's far less. This is a dramatic improvement from 55% in 1959. Okay? And it's even a bigger improvement from the 1920s and the 1930s and the 1940s. While, you know, they don't have the exact numbers, but as of late 2024, early 2025, it shows our poverty rate is about 18%, depending on who's measuring it. A lot of those have to do with old people and people who are just unemployable because of injuries, et cetera, in a old age. But, you know, when people say this, and this is something that annoys me, and I want y'all to listen to me real careful, okay? All right? We were nowhere near where we are coming out of segregation, all right? And, you know, the thing is, a lot of people, you know, when they say we were better off doing segregation or doing 1950s, they try to put a stamp on that. They say, see, we haven't built anything since the 1950s. How many of you all have heard these so-called, you know, you've heard these black online people say, you know, what have we built? What have we built since then? What have we built? Have y'all heard that before? What have you built? What have you built? What have you built since the 1950s? They'll point out that back then, black people built churches and schools and neighborhoods, and we had these tight-knit communities. We would tight-knit because we couldn't move anywhere else. That's why we would tight-knit. You understand? And yeah, but I'll agree with that. Factually, it's true. Yeah, we had tight-knit communities because you couldn't move anywhere else. You grew up and died in the same community unless you moved to another city. And I'll agree, we built a lot. We built a lot of institutions. We built a lot of social infrastructure. We built a lot of communities in the face of the exclusion, but we were still poor and powerless. Those churches did not mean ownership or capital. Those schools didn't translate to like equal funding or economic. Those neighborhoods existed largely because black people were forced into them, not because we were wealthy or made choices. We had to live there. You see, and community strength filled the gaps, right? But it didn't replace wealth. So acknowledging that we built a lot in the 1950s and before that, that doesn't change the fact that we were poor. Okay, and not from a position. So here's the thing. Let me just say this. When you have these people who say, you know, when you have these people who say, what have we built? Say we built a lot of wealth. Okay, we've built a lot of wealth over the past 75 years. We built a lot of businesses. We've had a lot of professionals enter into the workforce. We've accumulated a lot of assets. We've created a black middle and upper class that barely existed during segregation. We are literally the richest black people on the planet. And we're not interested in trading that progress for someone else's nostalgia. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start playing these videos, and I want you guys to pay attention, and I will do my very best not to talk over them. But, you know, sometimes I find it irresistible when it comes to some of these things. I have to say something. You understand me? Got to say something. Some of this stuff is just foolishness and nonsense. But I'm going to go ahead and let them play. You guys hit the #1 button. Make sure you can hear when it's going, and I want to make sure you all hear me when we're speaking here. I'm going to go ahead and let it rip. Y'all hit the #1 button. Let's see who's up first. Yep. Let's see here. Boom. All right. Fair you.
Like, I wouldn't mind being able to go to the grocery store without them. I wouldn't mind being able to play my favorite game without them. I wouldn't mind having my own designated water fountain. Like, not everybody was trying to get into a party of people that don't want us around. We would rather be with our own folks.
Okay. All right. You want to be with your own folks respectfully. I'm going to let you go ahead and have it, young man. Let's see who else has something to say. Hit the number 1 button. Y'all hit the number 1 button. Praise God.
Segregation shit, man. I'm not gonna lie. Look, I love everybody. I love everybody. People are people, right? But at the end of the day, this segregation is gonna help us as Black people more than anything. And here's why.
Oh,
It's gonna teach
really?
us to love each other again. There's too much hate in the Black community right now, man. We don't trust each other. We don't love each other.
So you think we trusted each other back then? Is that what you think? You think back when we were segregated, we trusted each other? Is that what you think? When you say trust, what do you mean? Because you think Black men and women weren't cheating on each other back then? Or you think Black men and Black women weren't abusing each other and fighting in the street? I don't think you know, brother. I'm just saying, but keep on going. Keep on going. But this is what we're dealing with. I want y'all to listen to these young people.
We damn near don't want to be around each other. You know what I'm saying? So segregation, to see just our people, to see our people helping each other, to see our people believing in each other, to see our people.
You just gonna force us to be together. That's what you saying. You just gonna make us be together. We just gonna be here. That's what you force segregate. Go ahead, brother.
Look, I'm looking forward to it. It's about time. It's about time. I'm with it.
Mm-hmm.
I am with it. Let's segregate all the way.
Now look, you know, segregation means you can't go over to the white part of town. You got to stay in the Black part of town. So what that means, sir, is that when the police see you in the white part of town, they have they can go ahead and hit you up right then and there. They can go ahead and handle you right there. Okay, they don't have any reason. You've already breaking the law because you're not supposed to be here. You are not supposed to be here. Let's keep listening.
Me trying to segregate us and shit, gang. What the fuck? I can see the Black side of America right now. BBL Plaza Mall. Hood. 4K Trey Bank. You know what I'm saying? What you talking about? Y'all gonna have a basketball team called the Young Niggas. Niggas gonna be lit. Segregate us, nigga, on hood. It's gonna be.
Does that sound lit to you all? Does that sound, you want your basketball team to be called the YNs? You want your bank to be 4 Trey 3 Bank? Is that what you want? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Is this I'm just saying. All you good folk who work hard and you got that good plumbing job and you're making money. Is you want to, because what it sounds to me like is he wants all the Black people who are prosperous and have done well for themselves to move back to the hood. That's what it sounds like to me. Yeah, bring all of them back to the ghetto. Make all these prosperous, except that 79 to 81% of Black people. We want all them that aren't in poverty. We want all them to come back to the ghetto. That's what we want. That's what it sounds like to me. Let's keep listening.
People gonna bring the parades back. I can't wait to see the old, not these new parades, the old school parade. Oh boy, y'all gonna have this. I can see it right now. Trump gonna get this shit popping. Gonna bring back Long John Silvers. Yeah, we're gonna have Black officers again that know your mama. So when they pull up, your ass don't always go to jail. Our Black mayor or president gonna be talking about some every Sunday is soul food Sundays. I fucks with it. All the fucking Black people whooping each other kids again and bringing them to the house.
You want other Black people whooping your kids? What if you don't raise your kids like other Black people? I'm just saying. Do you really want other Black people whooping your kids? What if you have a differing opinion? You see, what if somebody whoop your little girl because they called her tooting up her little skirt? Are you gonna get mad at that? Is that what you want? I'm just saying. So
I can whoop their ass again, and I can be like, nigga, you gonna go down to Cassandra's house embarrassing me, nigga. Nigga gonna be shooting dice, and ain't nobody gonna get. Nah, people.
We're gonna be shooting dice. So when we come home after a hard day of work, doing HVAC or coming home from truck driving after being over the road, when I come home to my house, my next door neighbor is shooting dice. Is that what you hardworking men want to deal with? Ladies, is that what you want to deal with when you come home and your feet hurt, you about to kick your shoes off at the front door? When you get into the atrium of your apartment, there's some dudes shooting dice. Is that what you all want? Is that what you want? I'm sure there's some people that like that, but I would much rather live around people who have my same belief system. I'm just saying. Okay, so let's retire that young man. Let's move on to somebody else. Let's go ahead and take a look at what else. Let's see what we got. A little sister here. Let's see what the sister has to say.
about segregation, and it was a very interesting conversation. She has a big heart and highly empathic, just like I am. So initially, she received the information with tear-filled eyes when I spoke about the challenges Black Americans faced back when segregation was a big hindrance on our progression towards any type of wealth or any type of progress in this country. But then I turned it around because I said, then we didn't have our own, but who is your eye doctor? Who is your therapist? Who is your dentist? And she immediately realized, oh, they're all Black people. So she understands we have our own now. We have judges, we have lawyers, we have doctors, we have contractors, we have everybody we need. That wasn't the case back then. That's the case now. So if segregation,
Man, you're a Black judge. No, you were segregated. You didn't have enough right. You couldn't even vote. Okay, you couldn't vote for the white man system back then, even though you were supposed to be able to. Keith, go ahead.
segregation were to happen again, we will be just fine. So she's actually like,
I don't know. Because see, remember, we segregated and we can't go to the white people's schools. Okay, we can't attend the white people's schools, ma'am. Their college, the little dental colleges, it's white schools. You can't go there. Matter of fact, even if you do get admitted, you can't live in the white people's community that's near the schools. You got to live across town in the Black people's community, right? And take a bus, a segregated bus. You understand what I'm saying? You see how this begins to escalate? And what if you have to pee when you get to the white people's school? You gonna have to pee outside. They only got white people's bathroom. You can't pee in the white man's bathroom, the white woman's bathroom. You can't even pee in the white transgender people's bathroom. You got to pee out back. With the segregated colored people's facilities. This is what you say. You think it's just gonna be all hunky-dory? You better cut it out. Let's move on to the next person. These young people, like, boy, I tell you, we got to do better. We got to do better. Let's go ahead and listen to some old people tell us segregation.
Elementary school in Terre Haute?
Yes, at Booker T. Washington.
And that was a segregated school?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about that experience.
It probably, looking back, it was probably the best school experience of my life. All of my teachers were Negro. That's what we were called then. My third grade teacher was Jane Dabney Shackelford. Okay. She wrote the very first book very first book about African American history for children. Okay. It's called The Child's History of the Negro. She was my third grade teacher.
Somebody type Meemaw in the chat room. Go ahead.
My seventh grade teacher was John Wesley Lyda, Sr. He wrote the book, The Negro in Northern Indiana. Those are the kinds of teachers I had.
And that's great, Grandma. That's great. Okay. But could it be that others may have differing opinions? Because, we've heard a lot of young people talk about their experiences, but, maybe Meemaw, maybe Big Mama might have something else to say. So we have brought in a Big Mama.
It was like to go to a segregated high school.
Because there's always other opinions, you can't just pick and choose the opinions that you like. So let's talk to Big Mama here. Go ahead, ma'am. Let's see what Grandmother has to say. Because you said the segregated schools were great for you. Maybe you were good. Maybe people liked you. Maybe the teachers liked you at the segregated school. But let's see what.
From the Black American experience. I'm with my 85-year-old grandmother. And I want her to share with you guys what her experiences were like. So, Grandma, what year did you go to high school?
The year that I went to high school was in 1955.
And you graduated when?
I graduated in 1958.
Okay, and so we have some of my grandmother's high school photos. So, Grandma, what is this? What are we looking at?
Well, this is the year I went.
Look how beautiful she is. Look how beautiful she was. That's it. Go ahead, Grandma. Go ahead.
Went to my high school prom in 1958.
Wow, look at this dress.
Gorgeous. Look at her. Gorgeous. Beautiful. Got the little bow in the front. Beautiful. Go ahead.
Yes.
How was that? Was that dress itchy?
No.
Oh, okay.
But it was we had to wear crinoline slip in there to make it stand out.
You can definitely tell this is from the 50s. I see like the 50s TV back there.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. When you went to a segregated school, kind of explain that to people. Like, what did that mean to go to segregated schools?
Well, to go to you only would see people of your own color.
Yes, color.
And all your teachers were of your color.
All your teachers were black. That's what she's saying.
Back then.
Did you ever play like football?
Beautiful. Look how beautiful she is. Just gorgeous. Somebody type gorgeous in the chat room.
Games or any sports games. Did you play white schools or you only had to play other black schools?
Are you kidding me? No, not white schools, but we did play other schools of color.
What she's saying is we played Mexican schools and people of other ethnicities. We didn't play any white schools. Okay. Our sports teams did not play any sports against white people. All right. Go ahead. Let's listen to Grandma.
During that time in the 50s, what was the term used to describe black people? What were you guys called? You didn't use the word black.
No, we were colored.
Oh, okay.
Colored people.
When you were in high school, were your teachers only black or were they other races?
They were all colored teachers.
Okay.
No other race.
Wow.
So your Spanish teacher was colored. Your French teacher was colored. Your math teacher was colored. Your football coach was colored. Let me break. The kicker on your football team was colored. Okay. That's what everybody was, janitors, everybody. Okay. And y'all all lived in the same community. Let's keep listening.
When you were in school, did you guys have some of the same books or educational resources as some of the other white schools?
No.
What? So separate, but unequal. That's what you're saying. So the other lady, Meemaw and Grandma seemed different. Meemaw had a great experience. She liked going to the all black school, but Grandma's being honest. No, we didn't have the same stuff that the white people had. Let's let her finish talking to us.
We had leftover things, books. We didn't have the equipment that they had.
Keep in mind, we're still paying the same amount of taxes that white people are paying, but somehow we don't have the same stuff that they have. We get the leftover stuff. This is segregation. So Grandma is telling you, hey, look, my experience was that the black schools didn't have the same resources. They didn't have the same opportunities that the white school had. Now, that's not taken away from those wonderful and great black teachers that did the best they could, but the children were still sent into the world without the best education available by comparison to what the white folks had in the other schools. So let's keep listening.
In the white schools. And I think that limited us
it limited
from learning what we needed to learn.
We were limited from learning because we had deficient schools. Okay, let's keep listening.
I see. So your education was hindered because you didn't have all the resources that maybe some of the white schools had.
Of course.
Right.
Being limited and things out there that you want to see, you should know about. We were limited in knowing about those things.
Let me know if you guys.
All right, so you've heard too. So because people have something called confirmation bias, and they just hear what they want to hear. But I'm gonna put it in your face. Let's go ahead and move on to hear some more young people tell us, that we were better off doing segregation. Hit the number 1 button. Make sure you can hear.
With my sister the other day, and I was telling her that I personally feel like black people were better off during Jim Crow.
But we were better off doing Jim Crow. Do you all know what Jim Crow was? Jim Crow was when you could be snatched up off of the street for vagrancy, just from walking from one part of your community to the next. And you could be there's black men right now who've been disappeared. Their families don't know where they disappeared to in the 1920s and 30s. Many of them ended up in some of these prison farms, working, tried and convicted for crimes like reckless eyeballing, walking on the sidewalk, trespassing, and vagrancy. This is Jim Crow, little lady. You see, this is what you're saying we were better off as. You're giving white people, white law enforcement, a reason to roll up on you and snatch you off the street because you're in the wrong part of town. You understand? Let's keep listening.
Hear me out. Hear me out.
I'm gonna hear you.
During Jim Crow, everything was separate. Now it wasn't equal, but it was separate. We had our
Yes, it was not equal. We can't just skip over that. We don't want to just skip over that. We're already dealing with issues with water in a certain town in Michigan. It's a black town, and the water's messed up, so people can't drink the water in this certain town in Michigan. That's what separate and unequal means. Okay, that's what separate and unequal means. See, if you force people to use the same resources that you use, then guess what? They can't cheat you out of what you're entitled to based on the tax dollars you spend. I'm just saying, let's just listen. Let's keep listening.
We had our own hospitals, doctor's offices. We had our own schools.
The schools were deficient. The doctor's offices were what you imagine them to be. So they didn't have the facilities that they needed. If you needed to get your heart checked, you had to go to the White Hospital and they wouldn't take you. So you just didn't get your heart checked. You see, I mean, a lot of these young people are just, I hate to say it, they're talking from a place of lack of knowledge. I don't want to use the term ignorance, but they are very ignorant of what was really going on back then.
Banks. Like, we had everything that was run by our own people. Yeah, it was fucked up that we probably had like less or like not up to.
We probably had death. We had probably had a lot of children dying at childbirth. We had a lot of women dying during childbirth. We had a lot of poverty. We were poor. Okay, let's not forget that, because we're a small economy. If you just leave 9% of black people to take, at that time it was 9%, we don't have enough people to generate enough jobs for our earners. We just don't. We don't have enough entrepreneurs in the community. So they're going to have to go other places. It doesn't work like that. All right, we don't have a closed economy in the black community. You need to think about that. Let's keep going.
Like the standards that we wanted, but it was ours. That was our shit.
So basically, you said you'd rather be the queen of a junkyard. That's yours. All right, I can respect that.
We ran that shit.
We still didn't run it because we were still in America. We were still subject to the laws of the United States of America. Law enforcement, the school curriculum was governed by the dominant group of people that ran the country. Okay, so you're not you're not where you need to be.
We had our own economic system. Like, money was thriving. Black families was thriving. There wasn't no government.
We were not thriving. We were poor. We were poor. Okay? We were poor.
There were 2-parent households. Like, family was family back then.
Okay.
And more importantly, we stuck together. Like, we came together
when
it was necessary.
Together, we were forced together.
Take me back to those days, minus the fucking water hoses, like getting hung and shit. Y'all can keep it. That black pride, I want that bit.
You cannot separate Jim Crow from segregation. You can't do that. You can't separate Jim Crow from segregation. They're one and the same. Separate is inherently unequal. I'm gonna deal with that in a minute. This is gonna be a barn burn. I need y'all to understand that this is something that's been festering, and unfortunately, if you don't check people, they'll just keep going with it. You understand?
Explains what the new face of homelessness will look like in America.
Okay, say that for another day. Y'all hit the number one button. Keep listening. Let's see what else we got.
Controversial, but good morning, cousins, nieces, nephews, and all the family members in between. This may be controversial, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I think we do need to bring back segregation. And for this reason alone, I like to know where I'm not welcome, so I don't fucking go there. I'm for it.
So you guys, okay, here's the thing. You don't know where you're not welcome? Here's as they say in New Orleans, picture this. You're driving down the street and you got 2 gas stations, one on the left, one on the right. And in one gas station, you see I don't know, a taco shack next to it, and lots of people over there, black people hanging out. And then across the street, up the road, you see one with Confederate flags outside. You can't make an educated guess as to which one would be more hospitable to you, huh? When you walk into a room, walk into a restaurant, you got a bunch of black people in there, as opposed to when you walking into a restaurant, you got a bunch of folks that don't look like you in there. Which one do you think you're more welcome in? I mean, look, I don't think that's a good enough excuse. If you can't figure out where you welcome or not, then that's something that you got to work out with. But go ahead, brother. I think you being disingenuous with that particular statement.
Let me know, hey, bro, you can't come here. Cool. I ain't coming there.
Yeah, you can't come to the hospital. You can't send your kids to school here. You can't drive down this street. You can't be in this community at any time. You can't be in this part of town after a certain time. You can't go to this shopping center. You can't go to this facility to even work. You can't go here to live. Is that what you want? I'm just saying. Think about it. What are you asking for? Because see, they could say it could be a no-go zone to 90% of the country. Get to the point, there's some highways you can't use. Do you really think that's a good idea? All so you can do what? Say that this little part of town is ours. You're going to stay in that little part of town. And on top of that, when they talk about segregation, they're also talking about buses, airplanes. Okay. This is what they're talking about. So I don't think people are really thinking this through. Let's keep working.
I'm fine with black people spending money with black people. We spend the most. So why not spend it with our people? I think we should start segregating our money. Segregating our doctors. I like our black doctors. You know why? Because they have to work 2 times as hard as you white people. And that's
a lot of reason we had to work 2 times as hard as white people because they didn't have the facilities that the white people have, sir. So when it was time to take the test, and they had to double up and triple up to catch up. So that's something that a lot of folk don't understand. But
in fact,
man,
I don't mind black lawyers, dentists, any other profession, black cops. We should police our own.
Yeah, but what's going on? This is not stopping you from calling black lawyers. Speaking of which, if you need a black lawyer and you've been involved in a car accident, call me at 713-229-0770. Since he mentioned black lawyers, I am a black lawyer. I'm a very good black lawyer. You can hit me up at 713-229-0770. Okay, if you've been in a car accident, I'm licensed in Texas, Louisiana, New York, Illinois, Michigan, Arkansas. I think did I say Louisiana? So go ahead and hit me up if you've been involved in a car accident. Okay, but we'll let this brother get back because he said black lawyer, and that was my cue, and I wanted to make sure y'all knew who you're dealing with. Shout out to everybody who's contributed to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. Remember, if you learn something, I should earn something. But make sure you hit that subscribe button. All I need is 31 new subscribers, and I will get all the way to 90,000, 91,000. But we'll let the brother finish.
Because our own understands us. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's time. I think we should bring it back. But the thing about bringing it back is this. Mm-hmm. We will fuck you up if you try to destroy it.
With what, brother? What did you hear what happened in Venezuela? Did you hear what happened in Venezuela? Did you know that 20 Army Rangers dropped out of a helicopter and kidnapped the president of Venezuela and his wife? What are you talking about? How are we going? You think you're gonna pop your little 9mm, your little AK-47? What you think that's gonna do when they come in with them sonic booms and make your brain jiggle and you falling on the ground, bleeding out your nose and pooping on yourself like those Venezuelan military men did? And they would not cut it out. Stop it. It's not gonna work. And just get these silly notions out of your head. Somebody said this is a Pookie and Ray Ray rant. Yeah, man. Cut it out, brother.
No matter what you believe, I'm just a nigga that gets paid to smoke weed in the garage.
Well, then you don't need to be having this conversation, brother. If that's all you do. I don't get paid. I get paid to analyze people's statements. And this is a statement, this needs to be analyzed. And that's why I am doing what I'm doing. Y'all hit the #1 button and make sure if you learn something, I should earn something. Let's see who else has something to say. Okay, I want to see who else has something to say. All right. Let's listen to this.
Segregation come back. All I gotta say is, once black people start thriving, start having businesses, start having properties, start having land, and just thriving without y'all, do not come over here destroying our shit. Don't try to burn down our cities or none of that. Don't do that. You see black people hating on other white people because they got everything in the world? No. The fuck?
How we gonna stop them? They're gonna get drunk on the 4th of July, load up the pickup truck, and come on over there and cut up an act of food. All right, they're gonna be the people who are in charge of the larger political machine. All they gotta do is sign some papers and run a highway through your land. You understand what I'm saying? This is what our people were dealing with. They like, nah, we need to get segregated because we're gonna live right next to the white people. So if they want to destroy any of our communities, they're gonna be destroying their own community at the same time. You don't understand what our people were dealing with. You all are just taking a snapshot of what was going on, and this is silly, and it's actually dangerous. We will stay in our corner,
build our shit up, mind our business. That's it. We just want to thrive. So if y'all see us doing good, please leave us be. Leave us be. Spare us. Just like y'all spare every other race that come over here and build up and have all these businesses.
No, they don't.
Have y'all ever been to like Duluth, Georgia? Like literally, it's Korean businesses everywhere, on every block, on every corner. And it's just like, okay, cool. Nobody's messing with their stuff. So I want that same energy when we build our stuff.
I don't think you notice that ICE is running up in those businesses, ma'am. They are running up in those businesses and they are removing those people. Okay, so when you say they're not messing with them, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that. But let's keep moving.
Stuff up like that. So once you see black businesses everywhere, do not come over here destroying our shit. Damn. Okay, if y'all don't want us in y'all shit, that's okay. All right, whatever.
Now I'm just asking. Are you all listening to these young people? It's not just young people, it's old people too. But are y'all listening to this? This is what they're talking about. All right, little girl with the little nose rings and whatnot. I mean, I'm just saying, man. Let's keep listening.
But once we build a life for ourselves, don't fuck it up. That's all we asking. All right? You ain't even got to see us. Like, just don't come over here destroying our shit. Okay? Because black people we ain't even gonna be stunting y'all. Like, that's the thing. We ain't even gonna be worried about y'all. And black people never was worried about y'all even back when there was segregation. You know what I'm saying? The only problem that black people have with white people is that white people were racist. That's the only problem that we have with white people. Yeah. We have a problem that y'all like us based off our skin. I'm sorry.
All right, then. All right.
Melanated people, we just want to be left the hell alone. We don't even want to be bothered. And it's hard for people to comprehend this stuff. But think back in the 60s, Muhammad Ali said, we should just have our own state. And they're like, well, why? Why did you want to be?
Well, he said that because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that, and he was repeating the statements of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Okay. But, is that feasible? Because it wasn't feasible then. It's not feasible now. You think these white folks are going to give you Texas? Do you think these Mexicans are going to give you Texas? Let me start there. Who's going to just give you anything? But let's keep going, brother.
You do not want us in your neighborhoods. Clearly, you don't want us in your schools. You don't want us at your jobs. You do not want us around. You always harassing us. So, of course, throughout history, black...
Well, if you don't care what white people think, why do you care if they don't want you around? Because, see, I truly don't care what white people think, and I don't care what they want or what they don't want. See, that's the difference between me and you. I just don't care what they want or don't want. They know I don't care what they don't or don't want. And I'm willing to fight for what my rights are and what's supposed to be mine. You see? Don't worry, but you'll get there.
People like, all right, we just have our own neighborhoods, our own communities. And what happened? White mobs come and kill and tear everything up. We get our own sports. Oh, no. You guys... Why don't we all play together? And then you see what happened in the NFL and the NBA, how they treat, us melanated people. You get what I'm saying? It just don't make.
You mean black people? See, yes, I'm. There's a lot of melanated people, but we're talking about black people. Specifically, we're talking about black American people. I'm not a people of color, okay? Because see, they'll, and this is kind of a side note. we went from being people of color for like 15 years, and now they're trying to say melanated. No, I am a black person. I'm a foundational black American. Stop calling me melanated, okay? Because there's a lot of shit. Excuse. There's a lot of animals that are melanated. A polar bear is melanated. No, stop calling me melanated. I am a black American man. Okay, I'm a foundational black American man, to be specific. If you want to talk, so you can understand exactly where I'm coming from. So stop that. Stop calling me melanated. That does not sound chic. It does not sound intelligent. It just sounds like it's so all inclusive that I don't know who you're talking about. You talking about melanated people in the NFL or melanated people in the NBA? You mean black people, black men specifically? Cut it out, little brother.
Since the obsession they got with us, but they supposed to hate us. I got a racist troll. Now, if you know me and my content, I don't do where I reply to your comment with the video with your stuff up in the corner, because I ain't about to help blow up your corny ass page. But I got one, no lie, I've been commenting on my shit for 3 days in a row.
God bless you.
In the 1930s, the Nazis said law students to the U.S., to the South, to study Jim Crow. And those students would go on to write the Nuremberg laws. And that's the world that you say we were better off under.
That's what they're saying, brother. That's your peer group. That's what they're saying.
The people that say that black people were better off during segregation have a completely warped view of what Jim Crow segregation actually was. And it shows that you have absolutely no Jim Crow segregation actually was. Our history. And I view that as Jim Crow segregation actually was. Our history. And our subjugation segregation actually was. Our segregation, not even our enslavement, our segregation was. They used to not even our enslavement, lynch black people for being successful.
Yep. And that's something they don't. So all you doctors and lawyers and engineers and school teachers and all you successful folk, you can get targeted. They weren't just targeting poor sharecroppers who were accused of violating laws. They were going after the rich people. Lynching was an economic tool to undermine the success of successful black people, largely storekeepers and people who competed with white people for not only white dollars, but black dollars. They didn't even want you selling to your own people. It's the same thing they do. If they can't buy you out, they'll beat you out. Okay? And this is what's happening right now. But keep listening.
They used to schedule lynchings on Sundays outside of churches. That's what we were better off as?
We weren't, brother. We were not. I'm glad you know.
And you can't separate the Jim Crow from the segregation. Not in America.
Tell it.
Like,
tell it, young brother.
The civil rights movement wasn't just because we wanted to kick it with y'all.
No, it wasn't.
We wanted access to resources. We wanted you to stop fucking killing us.
Yes.
The first ever campaign ever created for black liberation was an anti-lynching campaign. It was
stop killing us. Isn't that something?
Literally stop killing us. That was the baseline.
Yes, it was.
The first iteration of the civil rights movement, as soon as we get freedom, it was first stop enslaving us.
Yes.
Stop human trafficking us. Stop stealing our bodies and fucking us and whatever. Stop eating us. Then it was stop killing us. Then it was, can we have some rights? That's what we're talking about here, guys.
That's what we're talking about, brother.
Let me shut the fuck up.
No, you did it. Shout out to this young brother, because I'm glad there's some people pushing back against this foolishness that these folks are talking about. Y'all hit the #1 button. Make sure you can hear.
were better under segregation, and they give reasons such as like the money stayed within the community, you know, we were able to stick together, economic advancement, et cetera, et cetera. And there's some information to like back their claims up, but I still don't think that's true. And I honestly think for three key reasons. The first one is a mix of three connected ones: deindustrialization, crack, and Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
So after World War II, there were a lot of factories open, there were a lot of jobs open, and that affected everyone. Everyone was getting jobs, from black people, white people, everyone. And
the reason that we had a lot of factories open and there were a lot of jobs available is because the rest of the world had just went through World War II. Japan was flattened. Okay. Germany was, you know, run over. Most of Europe was bombed to hell. China had just got out of a civil war. And so we had no business competitors. America was the only industrialized country doing anything. So yeah, they're going to put everybody to work. Oh yeah, come on, bring the darks too. Come on, darks. Yeah, we'll put them. We need them now. We'll need them now. We'll figure a way to get them out later. But we got to build these widgets and gadgets and sell them to all these people around the world. So yeah, everybody benefited from that. There was a post-World War II boom. You see, we had no competition on this planet. That's what was going on, because the rest of the world was in shambles and they had to have time to rebuild. So that's why the 1950s were so prosperous. And what happens when people are prosperous? They get married, they buy houses, they buy cars, they send their kids to college, et cetera, et cetera. But that is a time period that is not going to return unless you think America, unless the rest of the world some kind of way gets returned to the Dark Ages or to the Stone Age, and then America is left on its own. Maybe that's the only way that happens. But let's keep listening to the brother. But nobody will tell you that. Nobody will tell you that the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s were so prosperous because we were the only shop in town. You see, there was no Germany, there was no China, there was no Japan, there was no Europe. Everything was shot to crap. That's why we did so well. If you wanted it, it had to be American made.
That helped grow black middle class, basically. The black middle class was able to grow in a lot of places, both in rural and urban areas. And at the same time, segregation was still going, both up north and down south in different ways. And so you had these concentrations of increased black money.
Yeah.
Then the 70s and 80s hit, and
but we were still poor. Okay, so it wasn't like we were getting a lot of the money. White people were getting the money, but they still systematically locked us out, even though white folks after World War II had all this prosperity. They still found ways to lock us out. You see, this is what segregation did. This is what you all don't seem to understand. It was going around, but we were around the money. Okay, yeah, I got a job, but you're gonna wash my floors, and your wife is gonna cook my cook my family dinner. That's what you're gonna do. All right, no, we're not gonna let you be a mechanic, but you can sweep the floor in the mechanic shop. Okay, keep that in mind.
Coinciding of two things happens. First, black people who can leave predominantly black areas, some of them do, and also factory jobs leave or are mechanized, so black people are the first ones fired. So now black areas in urban cities and even in the rural, what they call rural ghettos, are much poorer. And then Reagan gets in office. Reagan cuts affirmative action programs, cuts affirmative action enforcement, and cuts government jobs, which disproportionately employ black people because they're one of the only equal opportunity employers.
So they gave it and then they took it away. You see what I'm saying? You got to hire some of these black people for some of these jobs. And come on, Tom, we'll put if not, we're going to make you do it. Blah, 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 blah. We need them to work. And then 70s, 80s roll around. We're going to cut all that. Okay. That's how this system works. Let's keep going.
On top of that is crack and the response to crack from Reagan's advent. All those things coincided with integration. So black middle class people leaving wasn't necessarily the cause of that, especially because it's not necessarily true that black middle class people don't live around poor black people. Like to this day, black middle class people, both in cities and suburbs, live around poor black people. And even middle class towns that are predominantly black don't have that much money. They're not like these rich black places.
Yeah, successful black people live around other successful black people. most successful black people, when given a choice, they would rather live around black people, and their top choice is other successful black people. We segregate ourselves. I mean, it is what it is. Most black people don't live around white people, generally speaking. We're still a segregated country, but it's done by choice, not by force. So, and if you got enough money if you're rich, you can pick and choose where you want to live, and you typically want to live around people with the other values and experiences in life. All right, so let's dispel that. Black people have never been running up under white people. We don't want to run up under white people. We don't want to be white people. We don't do that. I don't know where that even comes from. That's something that was imported over here. But either way, let's keep it pushing.
And that gets to my last point about what segregation is about. Segregation is not about, oh, they have theirs, we have ours. No, it's about that money. It's about a lot of things, but it's about the resources. Anytime in history that black people on our own in this country have tried to fight for more money, more resources, just for our own selves, we get denied. They did it in Tulsa in 1921. Then Tulsa got burned down. Wilmington in 1898. Wilmington got cooed and raided. That was all on our own.
Now, the thing is, they rebuilt Tulsa. A lot of people don't say that. Tulsa, Oklahoma was rebuilt. That Black Wall Street, it happened. It was rebuilt. And it was up there 20 years later. Okay, so a lot of people don't tell you. It's not like some of these towns weren't rebuilt. We rebuilt them. Okay, we didn't just let them, they burnt down and we left. We rebuilt them. And that's something that people don't really talk about. But let's get
it ourselves. No white help necessarily. It was still burned down. Anytime as black people we're making money without some white people, and sometimes even the right white people, they're gonna come after us. That's just how it goes. Like, even when we had those black businesses across the South and these places that are segregated, a lot of the time they were getting money from white people. And that's no shame to them. They made it work. You have to make it work with what you can. But they were getting money from white people as well. And that's what segregation was about. It is about. It's about making sure we don't have access to more resources, more money for us to grow and succeed. Black people thrived in spite of segregation, not because of segregation. And the data...
We were poor. We were poor. We did not thrive. We were poor. All right. If people keep using that word, you can't say we were thriving if 60% of us were living below the poverty line. And see, that's the problem. And this is not me making this up. You all can go to Google AI right now, and you will learn that in 1959, 60% of our people, or 55.1% of our people, were living in poverty. So how is that we were thriving? How can you reconcile those two facts who are diametrically opposed? They don't mesh. And see, if 60 or 55% of your people are living below the poverty line, that means there's a large percentage of people who are teetering around the poverty line. So and all of y'all, because of segregation, are living together. If 60% of the people in the community are impoverished, and you got your butt in that same community, all of y'all are living poor. It's no different than if you live in the projects and you live around the projects. Anybody who's lived around the projects know you might as well live in the projects. You go to the same schools, you go to the same barbershops, hair salons, you shop at the same stores. You go to the same entertainment, movie theaters, pool halls. All of y'all are poor. That's what these young folk don't. We were not striving. We were making it irrespective of the conditions. That just goes to show how tough and gifted and beautiful we are as black people. Now, let's go ahead and listen to some white people, because I know you all don't want to hear what I got to say. If Uncle D said, no, he's nothing what he's talking about. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see what white folk have to say. All right, now I want you to understand this. Fair use. Let me go ahead and make sure I put the music on, because I don't want them to zap me with some sort of I don't want them to zap me with the community strikes. I'm gonna let the music play. But this white man is basically just saying, I play with black kids. Okay, I play with black kids, basically. But what he's pointing out is this is the exception to the rule. I play with black kids. because the rest of the people were segregated.
I had a couple black friends I used to play with, and if I was over one of their houses around dinner time, the mother would say, "Are you supposed to be home for dinner?" I'd say, "Well, I guess so, you know." She, "Well, that's all right. I'll call your mother and tell you you're going to stay here for dinner."
Yeah.
And my mother would do the same thing at our house. You know, if they were there playing with me, we'd eat dinner. And we never thought about it. We were integrated before integration ever became the fad. So
this is the exception. This is the exception. Okay, eating dinner with white folk was rare. You definitely didn't go to church with them. All right, let's listen to some more white people. Fair use, fair use, fair use. Here's a lady who's been on my broadcast. Let's listen.
You know, I'm real sick of hearing people say to make America great again, because that word again means go back to the 50s, which was real good for white men, but wasn't worth a damn for people of color and women. You need to know that, and that's what this fool wants us to do. And when you hear his mentor say, we're going to deconstruct the government, deconstruct the government, take away the things that are valuable for all of us, no, you cannot allow this to happen.
All right, let's listen to some more white people. That's the famous Jane Elliott. You guys have known her. I hope you know Jane Elliott. She's, like I said, she's been a guest on my broadcast, and it's still available. Let's keep listening. Let's see here if we can. This is one I like. I'm gonna try to let this. This one play. Y'all hit the number 1 button. Let me know if you can hear it.
Do you realize that black people in America, okay, are the most financially successful
I do.
across the spectrum?
I know that.
Of black people in any other country in the world.
Did not know that statistic.
Yeah,
that black
rich.
Americans would be in the 95th percentile for income in any other country in the world on average. That black Americans have more successful businesses in America. You know, this concept of racism.
Now, he's talking about what's going on in 2026. Now, if we go back to 2025, you heard what the man said. If you compare us, we'd be in the 95th percentile of everybody else. Now, they want us, this is now, and they want us to go back to this, okay? Hit the number 1 button.
Along the main square, where blacks were permitted to shop, but you had to follow a bizarre ritual of what you could try on and what you couldn't try on. You couldn't try on a cap, but you could try on a coat. If you were black in the summertime and you wanted an ice cream cone, you weren't allowed to go inside the Dairy Queen and sit down with everybody else beneath the fan. You had to stand outside. Segregation meant that for me as a kid, you weren't allowed to go to the swimming pool. You had to stand outside behind the fence and watch.
White people, you went to the swimming hole down at the creek, okay? White people got to swim in the swimming pool.
White children enjoy themselves while you sweated under a hot summer sun.
See what I'm saying? So, look, man, I want to go ahead and get going on with this broadcast. I'm gonna make sure there's might be a couple of more I want to talk about. Well, I thought this was funny. Go ahead and take a listen to this. Go ahead and listen to this.
Well, what do we have here? MAGA voters are moving to Russia because it feels like America during the 1950s. It's like a dream.
You got to be crazy if you move to Russia during a war because that ain't our war was over in the 1950s, sir, other than Korea. You want to move back? This man moved his whole family to Russia. Listen what happened to him. He's the number 1.
Come true. Look at it. They're so disillusioned by the way things have been going in the United States. And they praise Russia's Christianity, stunning scenery, and beautiful women. And they're also supportive of, you guessed it, Vladimir Putin. It seems they've lost faith in their hero, Donald J. Trump, and they're going straight to the source, Vladimir Putin. Oh, and they also believe Putin's narrative about the decision to invade Ukraine. Meet Peter, ladies. Peter Froween, is that how you say your name, Peter? We'll just call you Peter, hopes to start a family in his new home of Yalta with one of the 20% of Russian women who he says look like supermodels. And check out the stunning scenery. Pictured snowfall in Moscow in May. I mean, come on, MAGA. This guy or Donald Trump? You do the math. You're winning with Vladimir Putin. Duh. And get this, we even got testimonials. Rose, 49, relocated to Russia from Tallahassee, Florida with his wife and children and has not looked back since. I often say it feels like our positive vision of the 1950s America, he says. Ooh, right before civil rights. One program manager from Texas who wished to remain
when the blacks, had to shine our shoes and wash our cars. Shout out to Downrange. Thank you for the super chat. We only got 3 super chats. Y'all not learning anything yet? I guess I better work harder. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Do that for me, man. Make sure y'all do that.
Anonymous suggested Russia offered a simpler way of life. People are running around in America wondering why we have so many problems with suicide and depression, and they'll virtue signal and talk about the phones and it's this and that. And the reality is
basically what go ahead.
Children are not allowed to be children, the father of 6 said.
Basically what he's saying is they moved to Russia to get away from black people. That's basically we moved to Russia to get away from these dark people over here. We left Texas. Texas is not conservative enough for me. Now, I live in Texas, and I'm just tell you, I live in Houston, and I tell my children and my wife all the time, Houston is not real Texas. Real Texas is about 60 miles that way, or back that way. But right here, that ain't it. And so this man saying that Texas wasn't conservative enough for him, quote enough, I find that highly interesting. But nevertheless, he went to the extreme and went to Russia. Let's keep listening.
Doesn't that sound fun, MAGA? His comment bears echoes of the conservative Christian Feenstra family who moved from Canada to Russia to escape the LGBT ideology. Right? Farmer Aren Feenstra and his wife Anine made the decision to move their family of 10 from Canada to Russia in January. However, their dream appeared to go quickly downhill upon their arrival. Downhill? What do you mean? The proceeds from selling their farm in rural Canada were immediately frozen as their Russian bank deemed the sum suspicious. Oh, that's no big deal. That happens all the time. Now,
they got robbed by the Russian bank. You ain't never heard of the Russian mafia? You can go right up there to New Jersey and meet some of them dudes, but go ahead. They in Miami too. Go ahead, sir.
Now, back to the good times in Moscow. MAGA, look at that. You could live like kings and queens over there. I mean, this is Russia, MAGA. All the fun you can have. If this is what you mean when you say, make America great again, that means Trump supporters go to Russia. I am 110% in. I am 10 toes down for it, baby. Trump supporters, what are you waiting for? Get to Russia now. Trump supporters, get those knee pads.
I'm gonna try to play this too, and then we're gonna get to
the American flag.
Let me get through. I'm gonna let this play. These are children who spent some time in America during the height of Jim Crow, and they're going to tell you their perspective. Listen to this, young people.
You mentioned something about I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation indivisible under God, with liberty and justice for all. Well, the last phrase just doesn't suit everything. I mean, with this segregation problem here and the discrimination against colored people, how in the world could you have liberty and justice for all? And in one of my...
This young Filipino man is pointing out the hypocrisy of America. You got liberty and justice for all, but you got a population that's segregated.
Hospitality periods. I didn't expect that even the kids could carry it that far. I had the, privilege, I should say, of attending one of the dances sponsored by one of the civic groups. And I just noticed that, it was a big dance floor, and all the white kids were assembled on the left side, and the most, shall we say, not strategic part of the ballroom well, all the colored boys and girls were in there. And I never saw a white boy asking a colored girl for a dance, nor did I see a colored boy asking a white girl for a dance.
Mm-hmm.
I had enough of the experience.
So basically, what the young man is saying is that, you know, he went to a school dance and they literally had a rope between the two. That they split the gym in half, and black people on one side, white people on the other, or no rope at all, and you just knew not to cross that line. So, you know, family, this is some actual folk who are actually telling you what life was like back then. You've heard people from many different backgrounds. Now, at this particular point, I'm going to do what I normally do, and that's I'm going to fill you full of these fun facts. Now, oftentimes folks say, you know, black people were better. You know, we were better off during segregation. And the first thing they point to is marriage, right? They talk about the marriage rate, don't they? Right? Poverty rate be damned, but they're going to bring that marriage rate up, right? My good friend Kevin Samuels used to talk about the marriage rate and how high it was back then. And, you know, even in a conversation with him, you know, and brother, we were poor though. We were poor people. We was poor folk. You know, marriage rate is great, but we were poor. You see what I'm saying? Like, what's the fun of being married if you're poor? All right. So just keep that in mind. Now, again, you can't base how well off we were in one particular time because of one thing, the marriage rate. Okay. It's true. In the 1950s, black marriage rates were high, and they often mirrored or exceeded white marriage rates. Okay, about the mid 1950s, roughly 64 to 67% of black women had similar percentages of black men were married. So we was largely married. The majority of black families were headed by married couples. Okay, now those rates began to decline later in the decades. And many people equate a higher marriage rate with being better off. Somebody type better off. If you've heard anybody say better off because we were married, type better off. You poor, but you're married. Okay, you blacks, this is what your Charlie Kirk types are saying. You were better off when you were poor, segregated because you were married. And that's something we can support. Now, we were married during slavery, but any one of you all would say we were better off during slavery because that just sounds obscene. Nevertheless, again, I'm not going to get off the point that we were not only poor, but we were extremely poor. Marriage didn't equal wealth. Marriage didn't equal ownership. Marriage didn't equal access to money and finance. Black families could be married, stable, and still locked out of home ownership and fair wages and inheritance and economic stability. High marriage rates did not protect black people from poverty under segregation. So pointing to marriage rates without talking about poverty rates, wealth ownership, and economic power is highly misleading. And we weren't better off. We were surviving. And the difference, okay, we spent 75 years climbing out of poverty. We've built businesses, we entered professions, we've accumulated assets, and we created a black middle class and an upper class that barely existed during segregation. We have 1.7 million black millionaires in the United States right now. So people taking this snapshot of America, especially in the 1950s and 60s, saying that we were better off back then because we were married. Look, to understand whether that's true, you have to look at marriage rates over time in the first place, not just in one decade. All right? Now, you're going to learn something, and I feel like I should learn something if you learn something. So let's go through this history of marriage so we can finally put this foolishness to rest. First of all, marriage was not always as popular in America as it was in the 1950s, okay? In the 1880s, the U.S. marriage rate was about 9.2 marriages per 1,000 people. So in terms that you can understand, 18 people per 1,000 were married to each other. That means if you live in a town of 10,000 people, 90 people were married. Okay, or you had 92 marriages. That's what that translates to. So out of 10,000 people, 92 people were married. That's 1880. So let's say you move to a huge city, a big city of 100,000 people. That means 900 people were married. So if you live in a city with 1 million people, okay, you live in a city with 1 million people, that means 9,000 marriages are there. There's 9,000 couples in the city. That's what that means. Okay? All right? 9,000 people. That's what that translates to. All right? Now, at the same time, way back then in 1880, 31% of women had never been married. And that doesn't mean there wasn't other women out there who were widowed or whatnot. 31% of women hadn't been married, which means that only 69% of women had been married. And that's one of the highest that's the highest level of single women in the United States. Men, on the other, men also married, and they married later, all right, around 25, 30 years old. And so early America was not a country where everybody got married young or even got married at all. And then marriage rates slowly began to increase. And so from 1800 to the early 1900s, marriage became more common as men's wages improved and their jobs became more stable. And here's what happened. The immigrant communities became more integrated. You see, as it became easier to support a household, more people chose to marry. Marriage reached its highest point in the 1960s. This is something new. Because see, in the 1960s, 72% of adults were married. That's basically 8.5 marriages per 1,000. If you do that number, that's basically 17 people per 1,000 were married. Okay, that's what it's saying. All right, so 85 marriages out of 10,000 people. That's a high point. 850 marriages in a city of 100,000, and only 17% of women were never married. And that's the lowest level on record. That's in the 1960s, but that's an aberration. And see, the other thing is people also married young because they could afford it. And see, this is why the baby boomer generation, which is unique in history, this is why they stand out. Baby boomers are the most married generation in U.S. history. Okay? Because up to 96% of baby boomers were married at least once. They get divorced, and 67%, about 67% of baby boomers who divorce later, they get remarried. So they're a group of people that marry. So you can't compare to what you're doing right now in 2026 to these other people, because see, the baby boomers had a different situation than you have. All right. So whether we talk about initial marriages or as I call them, that starter marriage or that remarriage, they got married. In the 1960s, the marriage rates began to fall. Divorce increased. People waited longer to marry. Women gained more education and entered the workforce, and they had higher numbers. As a result, the shared marriage, the number of adults that started dropping. And by 2010, only about 51 to 52% were married. And that's much lower than the 1960s, but it's returning back to the numbers it was before that artificial bump in the baby boomers. Okay? So U.S. marriage rates have generally declined over recent decades. It's kind of going back to where it was, but they saw a rebound after the pandemic. In 2022, you had basically 6.2% marriages per 1,000, which is about 12 people in every 1,000. You know, they got married. And in that year, in real terms, like I said, that's 62 marriages in a town of 10,000 and 620 marriages in a town of 100,000. And that rebound shows that marriage didn't disappear, but it did. But it also didn't return to the mid-centuries like the 1960s. And the long-term trends show that it's still showing you're looking at lower marriage rates overall. And what's this saying is that, you know, so when people romanticize this very short, unusual moment in American history, and you treat it like the norm. Okay, when people look back at the 1950s and the 1960s, they see high marriage rates and they assume that that meant that society was healthier and more stable or better. Somebody typed better in the chat room, but the numbers show that the period was an exception. Okay, that's not how America actually functioned. Before that period, like in the 1880s, marriage rates were already lower. And after that period started in the 1970s, and it's continued today, marriage rates went back down. And that tells us marriage didn't collapse. It simply returned to its historical baseline once the special economic conditions disappeared. And what are those? Okay, are y'all with me? What are those special economic positions? You're looking at the post-World War era, which was very unique. The U.S. had strong wages, and we had stable jobs for men, and we had cheap housing, and we had no global competition. Shout out to Mr. Jackson. I knew he was going to learn something. I'm giving you all kind of ammunition because they keep blaming all you young people for not getting married. You need to get married. You need to get married. That's your generation. You baby boomers got married. You had a different set of circumstances. All right, let me get back to the common situation. Look, the conditions have pushed marriage up temporarily after World War II, okay? Once women entered the workforce in large numbers, people married later, and divorced more, and more choices they had, marriage rates naturally declined. So when people say things were better back then because people were married, they're confusing cause and effect. People didn't become prosperous because they were married. They got married because the economy made it easy to do so at the moment in time. So in other words, people didn't get prosperous because they got married. People were prosperous and therefore they got married. Okay, so this nostalgia, in other words, all right, this nostalgia is misleading. People are comparing to today, 2026, to a one-time economic peak between 1945 and 1960, not to the broader sweep of American history. And when you look at the numbers across time, it becomes clear that that in the past, the past they're longing for, this making America great again thing, it was never a permanent reality. It was just a temporary bubble. Now, here's the thing. We get the marriage thing, right? I'm not against marriage. I'm 100% for marriage, but you got to look at it across the entirety of America. Now, here's some other stuff they say. You know what else they like to say? They like to say houses. Housing is a problem, right? Y'all can't afford houses. Back in the 50s, everybody had a house. So make America great again means having your own house. And see, this is one of the biggest things people complain about when they compare the 1950s to 2026. Because the house right now is about $400,000. Houses back then, you can get one for a couple of months' salary, $7,000, right? They say the homes were so cheap back then. And yes, you're right. The homes were cheaper. In every sense of the word, they were cheaper. But people don't get the full picture. And why were they so cheap? What are you actually getting? Because see, the truth is, in the 1950s, the houses were cheap partly because they were easy to build and they were fast, but they were also standard, right? Their standards were dramatically lower. The land was abundant. The government heavily subsidized housing for some people, not black people. You black people didn't get houses. White folk got houses, okay? So let's start with the houses and what they actually look like. The typical post-war home in 1950 was 900 square feet, family. 900 square feet. The entire family had to live in 900 square feet. You looking at 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and 1 small living room and a tiny kitchen. No bonus rooms. You don't have an office. You will not be doing any YouTube broadcast from your 900 square foot home. You do not have that. You don't have any walk-in closets. You don't have a garage. You might have one of those extended garages out in the back. So when it's cold outside, you got to go in there, lock the car in. You understand? Everything inside the house was standardized. Nothing was custom. The cabinets were identical. The windows were identical. The doors were identical. The entire neighborhood was built like an assembly style. Everything looked alike. The developers, I think, with Levitt and Sons, they built places like Levittown. And there were thousands of houses that looked just alike, right down to the paint and the color. And you didn't design your house. You picked one of the two options of these prefabricated boxes. That's basically what they were. They were built fast. They used using new post-war materials like plywood and composition board, and they mass-produced wallpaper. The same industrial techniques used to build tanks and planes during World War II were repurposed to crank out houses. Speed mattered, comfort didn't, and they had very low standards. There was no central air conditioning, so your butt was hot in the summer. There was no cable. There was no internet. You didn't have a dishwasher. You had limited insulation, so your house was cold and your house was hot. This tiny house, you had one bathroom. Can you imagine living in a tiny 900 square foot house with one bathroom and you got a family of 4 or 5? A bunch of small bedrooms, barely enough room for a bed and a dresser. And here's another thing you got to consider. Where are my calorie-enriched people? Where are my calorie-enriched people? Where my husky folks at? All the husky people come to the front of the line. All my stout ladies, all you ladies out there who are a little chunky around the edge, you trying to get, you trying to get thinner for the winter. So you know what I'm saying? You trying to get small. You trying to do your thing in the spring so you can be a small for the fall. All you extra color, everybody who's going to the brunch tomorrow, all y'all come to the front of the room. See, here's the thing. People were smaller back then. The average man in the 1950s was about 2 to 3 inches shorter than he is today. Okay, so he's about 5'4", 5'6", somewhere up in there. And they weighed a whole lot less. They were smaller. They were small people. Okay, you see grandma on the little internet, see how small she was? Same with the women. And the kids were smaller. So you can fit them kids in a little small bedroom. You put all them kids in a little twin bed. It's fine. You can't put these big husky children that you have in a twin bed. These kids eat too much. They eat McDonald's all day. You understand? That was normal. Twin beds were normal. Today, y'all need a king size bed just for yourself. You understand me? Some people, this is a one person bed, your king size, especially if you like to spread out. You know what I'm saying? You trying to fit a modern king size bed into a 1950s home, you just can't. The rooms, the room is done. That's it. So when people say housing was affordable, what they really mean is you lived in a tiny house that looked just like your neighbor, that was mass produced. You had tiny rooms with one bathroom, no modern conveniences, no personal space, no AC, and you accepted it because that's all there was. Okay? Now add the economic side. Housing was also cheap because the government policy, especially the GI Bill, which offered low interest, low down payment mortgages. That's why you could even afford the house. But those benefits were not distributed evenly. You did not get them, black people. The black veterans who came home for World War II, you were purposely excluded on the state level because the people in charge of distributing them were the same people you had to deal with on a day-to-day basis who were subject to the segregation. All right, so you couldn't get it. White veterans moved into those new suburbs with these government-backed loans, and your butt was still over there. No, you're not moving. The land was cheap because there was a lot of it. Post-war America was still expanding outward. Developers could buy huge tracts of undeveloped land and build thousands of identical houses, little tiny houses. Somebody type tiny house in the chat. Tiny 900 square foot houses. Okay, single family homes. One wage earner. You didn't need everybody working. Why I gotta work to pay for this 900 square foot house with no AC in it? Larry, what do you mean? I'm not working, Larry. Why she don't need to work? Okay. They worked some manufacturing jobs. They had a union. They went back to their small house. They put their little, and I'm gonna talk about the cars in a minute. But look, these small, bare bones, mass. Y'all want to go back to that? Y'all, that's what make America great again. Okay, that's what it does. I want you to So when someone says "Make America Great Again," I want and points to the housing, and what they're really saying is, I want you to live in a 900 square foot box with 1 bedroom, tiny bedrooms, no air conditioning, no privacy, no customization, no modern expectations, and you call that the good old days? That's the trade-off. You see? And once you begin to and you black people are excluded from that, all of y'all are gonna live in the ghetto. Okay? All of y'all. You are not gonna move there. Okay? So once you understand what people are actually living with, that nostalgia, it starts to fall apart. Now let's talk about the cars. Oh, we can afford a car. Look, somebody in the chat room, you could get a used car for $100, and I'm gonna explain why you can get a used car for $100. See, a lot of people like to compare between the 1950s and the how much cars cost. Now, what is a car? You might get a nice luxury car for $100,000 new, okay? You might get a used car for maybe $15,000, $20,000, but they will say cars were so much cheaper back then. Yeah, you could get a car for a couple of months' salary, right? The average salary was like $3,200, so you spend $900 and you got a car. Cars were cheaper. But again, people don't fully understand what they were driving or what they were dealing with. The reason the cars were cheap in the 1950s is because they were death traps. They broke down constantly, and they almost had no safety measure at all. That's not an exaggeration. That's reality. This is why you had the shade tree mechanic. That was real. Everybody had to repair their car all the time because cars were always breaking down. If you didn't fix it yourself, you knew someone who could. Cars weren't reliable machines. You just drove for years. They were ongoing projects. You see, and safety was almost non-existent. By today's standards, the 1950 cars, they were extremely dangerous. They had no seat belts in most of the cars. They didn't have airbags. They didn't have crumple zones. They didn't have anti-lock locking brakes. They had no tracking control. They didn't have power steer. The steering columns were rigid metal spears, okay, aimed directly at your chest, okay? The dashboard was solid steel with sharp knobs sticking out of them. If you crashed, your body became the cushion. You were the airbag. You understand me? And this was called the second collision. They had a name for it, the second collision. You survived hitting the other car only to be killed by your own dashboard and steering wheel where you were pierced through the chest. Braking was terrible. Cars used four-wheel drum brakes that they just went out quickly, especially on highway speeds. And tires were trash. They had poor grip. I think they call them bias ply. They had poor grip. Driving in the rain was hazardous, right? And handling was unpredictable. And heavy cars didn't mean a safe car. They meant hard, unforgiving cars that transferred crash energy directly into your little fragile human body. You and your kids riding down the highway with no seatbelts on. This is what happened. So you know what was up back then? Traffic deaths were high. In the mid-1950s, the U.S. saw around 35,000 to 40,000 traffic deaths every year. Hopping in the car was dangerous. Even though there were far few cars on the road and people drove far fewer miles than they do today, it was deadly on the road. You could die out there, man. You see? Now, people like to say they don't make cars like they used to. What they really mean is they were simple, but they weren't durable, okay? In the 1950s, they rusted quick because there was no rust protection. And here's the thing, after about 100,000, they were done after 100,000 miles. They required constant maintenance, oil changes every few thousand miles. You had frequent brake adjustment, greasing, steering components. Steering components were jacked up. They were prone to stalling. They flooded. And a cold start probably, they had carburetors, so they couldn't start in the cold. And they were easy to fix because they needed to be fixed all the time. You understand me? I've had some buckets. I mean, I had a 1965 Cadillac, And I mean, I used to ride that car around, but once you get it started, you had to keep it driving, because if it stopped, then you got a problem. I had a 1971 Chevy Impala, and that was cool, you know, but it always had issues. You understand what I'm saying? I thought it was me, like maybe I'm a bad car owner or something like that. But no, come to find out, that was just the problem. Today, you got cars that can run up to 150, 200,000, 300,000 miles with basic maintenance. And that was just unheard of in the 1950s. So why were they cheaper? These cars that people say were cheaper, they were cheaper for a few reasons. They high volume mass production. Automakers like Ford and Chevy and Chrysler, they perfected the assembly line manufacturing technique after World War II. And so they just carried that over into making cars. And the other thing, they had a very basic design. It was a standard car, came with almost nothing, right? You had some options. Things were considered basic, like seat belts and heaters. You didn't have a heater in your car. Turn signals, you didn't have people used to turn like that, you know, going straight or going right, going left. You see what I mean? Can you imagine sticking your arm out the window all the time to let people know when you're going to turn? Nah, that was an option. Side mirrors were an option. Power steering was an option. Air conditioning was an option, and that probably barely worked, right? But these days, that stuff is not optional. You understand? And some of the stuff that we have now just, you know, it wasn't available. And the other thing is, there was no investment in safety or longevity. There was no expensive research and development department for crash testing and safety and engineering. None of that. And so when you adjust for inflation, many of the 1950s cars actually are similar in real dollars to modern day cars, but delivered far less safety and value and lifespan. So the real trade-off, so when someone says make America great again and points to how cheap the cars were, right? Cars that kill people more often, that break down all the time, that rust out early and require nonstop repair. Don't pretend that was better. You know, cars were cheaper, but they were cheaper because they were unsafe, they were unreliable, they had short lifespans, and preserving human life in them doing the crash was not priority. So that trade-off, that nostalgia, they forget about that. And once you understand that those cars really, what they really were, the romance disappears. Now let's move on to college. Are y'all still with me? Are y'all learning something? If you learn something, let me know. If you learn something, hit the #1 button. If you learn something, matter of fact, if you learn something, subscribe to the channel. Now, what about when they say, well, you know, college was cheaper in the 1950s? And that's true. College was cheap. But again, people don't know the whole story. College was cheap because the government paid for it. The government didn't pay, and they wasn't paying for you, okay? The government, black people, they weren't paying out of kindness. The government paid for it because millions of young men had gone to war, and a lot of them had come back. And if you wanted free college in the 1950s, the main way you could do it is get the GI Bill. And that means before you set foot on the college campus for free, you had to be willing to risk all that you had in your life. You had to be willing to go overseas during World War II and get dropped off in a foreign country and crawl through mud and face artillery and machine gun fire and bombing raids. You had to be willing to sit in trenches surrounded by dead bodies and former friends and men you trained with, young men that look just like you. And that's why the price of college was cheap. You understand me? Yeah. The Servicemen Readjustment Act, 1944, known as the GI Bill. It paid your tuition and your books and even your living expenses for millions of returning veterans, white men, not your all black behinds. Okay? All right. So you was excluded from that. All right. Nevertheless, it increased tremendously. It increased the college enrollment and it helped build a skilled workforce, but it was earned through military service. It wasn't given out free. And even then, access wasn't equal. Black veterans they were denied oftentimes admission to universities or blocked by segregation and discrimination, especially in the South. So even the benefits of cheap college were unevenly distributed. And now beyond the GI Bill, college was cheap for other reasons. After World War II, the federal government poured massive amounts of money into these universities, especially for science and engineering and defense research. The Cold War made higher education a national security priority, and universities were treated like weapons factories, just like chalkboards inside of a tank. You understand? But states also played a huge role. See, public universities were heavily funded by state governments, and some systems like the California public university system were designed to be tuition free or nearly free. And the idea was educate the population and fuel economic growth. And corporations got involved. Big companies donated money and equipment and research and funding to universities. And they made sure that there was a steady pipeline of trained workers and researchers, and higher education was treated as an investment, not just a personal expense. And here's another key point that you need to understand. Back then, college wasn't required for most jobs. You could graduate high school, walk into a factory and join a union and get a skilled labor because remember, they needed you. So college was cheap in the 1950s. What they're really saying is the government paid for it. Veterans paid for it with their bodies and trauma. And states, through your tax dollars, subsidized it heavily. And corporations got involved because they needed an educated population. And fewer people, but see, here's the thing. Higher education was treated like a public good, not a luxury. You understand? But if you want, here's the trade-off, family. Do you want to go to war? That's what you want to do? Huh? You want the government to massively fund that? Because see, when the government funds something, who eventually has to pay for it? Huh? What I'm trying to let me get to the main point. If you want to make America great again, you need to pay what America needed you to pay. All right? Because see, this is one of the main points. You romanticize the 1950s, but let's talk about the taxes. Yes, America was great, right? We was great back then, right? Marriage rates was high, we had cars and houses. I told you about them cheap houses and death trap cars, but it was also a country where you had to pay a very high tax rate, especially high earners. And when people say they want to make America great again, what they're really saying is, and whether they realize it or not, is that they're willing to go back to the tax system where very high incomes were taxed aggressively. In the 1950s, the statutory marginal tax rate was as high as 91%. 91%. That means if you earn above, let's say, let me put it in context. In the early 1950s, the top tax bracket income was over roughly $200,000 for a single filer and about $400,000 for a married couple. Now, if you adjust that for information, so that means anybody, single person who made over $200,000 was taxed at 91%. Married couples were taxed at 91% if they made $400,000. Now, if you adjust that for inflation, right, in the 1950s, roughly about $4 million in 2026. You had to pay 91%. You were subject to pay 91% of what you earn in taxes. So make America great again means that anyone earning the equivalent of $4 million a year would face 91% marginal tax rate on income above that level. And that's what it means. And now here's the part people usually misunderstand. Now, people didn't actually pay 91% of their total income taxes. The 91% rate was marginal, not total. It only applied to income above that very high threshold at the time, not to all income earners, because again, most people just made $7,000 a year. That was the average. They had deductions, they had loopholes, they had write-offs. They had effective federal income tax rate for a top 1%. The 1950s, they paid about 42 to 45%, but that's still a lot. You're still paying 42 to 45% of your income if you made $200,000 as a single person, which is $2 million so you paying like $1 million in taxes, and you only made $2 million. That's high, man. You see? And lower income Americans, they face higher marginal tax rates. The lowest marginal tax rate in the early 1950s is 20%. Okay? Up from 16.6% earlier that decade. Even average Americans pay more taxes than people today. You make $7,500 a year, and you got to kick the government $1,500 for that. So you're getting $6,000 a year. Plus, you got to pay your state taxes. So yes, people paid a whole lot more taxes across the board, right? And people live, you know, they look, you know, I mean, think about it. When people talk about this, they don't really talk about everything. You see? Now, if you want to compare that to 2026, you got 7 marginal tax brackets, 10%, 12%, 22%, all the way up to 37%. That's the highest. And of course, you have deductions. And that top marginal rate of 37% is still less than what it was in the 1950s, which is 91%. You understand? So the tax rates are much lower. And so when people talk about make America great and point to the prosperity in the 1950s, what they're really asking for is much higher taxes. That's what you're asking for. This is what you're asking for, family. Are you ready to pay that? Because nothing is for free. You want cheap education, you're gonna pay. You might not pay it in tuition, but you're gonna pay it in taxes. You see? So this is the problem that we have here. Make America great again means, here's another thing. All right. You want to benefit. You want the benefits of the past without paying the price of the past. And the truth is, the 1950s in America was built on high taxes, not low ones. Now let's also talk about the environment. And when I say the environment, I'm talking about the global environment. Okay, here's the part that people really don't want to deal with. And I want y'all to listen carefully because this is very important. And this is why that time period was an enigma and it should not be expected to return. America was great in the 1950s because the rest of the world was broke. Not only was it broke, it was flat broke. Europe was wrecked. We had bombed Japan. Most of Asia was trash and all their factories were destroyed. The cities were bombed out. The infrastructure was gone. You had whole countries just trying to feed themselves and keep the lights on. Because remember, the wars were fought in Europe. They were fought in the Eastern Hemisphere. They were fought in the European theater. They were fought in the Pacific Front. America didn't have those problems. The worst that happened to us was Pearl Harbor, and we had long since taken care of that. So America didn't have any competition when it was time to turn our machines of war into machines of manufacturing and progress and industry. All right. And there was nobody left to compete with us. The U.S. came out of World War II with factories standing. We had ports that were working because we used them all throughout World War II. Our economy was humming. Everybody else was having to start from scratch. And so when people talk about America's dominance back in, what they're really talking about is when America was the only industrial country in the game. And this is why that matters, okay? American companies didn't dominate because we were magically better. We dominated because there was no foreign competitors. And you weren't choosing between Toyota and Ford. There was no Toyota. Okay, you weren't comparing your Samsung or your Apple. None of that existed. You weren't buying iPhones. You weren't buying foreign electronics. All right, you were going to drive an American car. Okay, or you weren't driving. You were going to buy American appliances, or you weren't buying. You just wasn't gonna have it. Okay, and you were going to work for an American company, or you weren't gonna have a job. That's it. And so, because there was no other options, the money stayed right here. The top earners didn't reinvest in America because they loved America. They reinvested because there was nowhere else to put the money. Okay? No overseas factories, not anything serious, no global supply chain, no cheap foreign labor markets, not yet, no offshoring. If you wanted to grow, you had to build factories here. You had to hire American workers. You had to train people here. You had to pay American wages. So profits stayed inside the country. Now, let's be honest about what it would take to go back to that. To really make America great again, the way people mean it, you would need to change the environment so it could be like it was before. So the rest of the world would have to be broke again. That way you don't have any foreign competitors, no global trade, the way we know it is now. And American companies protected from competition because there was none. And the money it'll stay trapped in the US. In plain English, you need to send the rest of the world back to the Stone Age. And that comes with real consequences. No competition means fewer choices. You don't get tons of options. You get one. If you don't like it, oh well. Are y'all learning something? Because I don't see any chat room. I need the one buttons to be popping. Okay? That means innovation slows down because nobody's pushing anyone to be better. You have no competition. All right, that's like racing yourself on an open track. You don't have anybody to compare yourself to. There's no competitors. The prices stay high because you don't have any alternatives. And on top of that, the taxes go up because the government has to spend massive amounts of money on infrastructure and industry and defense and social programs to keep everything running. So when people say make America great again, what they're really asking for is less competition, fewer choices, higher taxes, restricted trade, and a system where America wins because everyone else is lost. And that version of greatness doesn't come from being the best, it comes from being the last one standing. Now, and unless someone is willing to say out loud that they want the rest of the world to be wiped out economically again, they're not really asking for the 1950s. They just want the benefits without admitting what actually took them to get there. Now, Black people, you all saw at the beginning of this broadcast, I had a whole bunch of people, young Black people especially, talking about, we were better off doing Jim Crow. Y'all heard that, right? And so I want you young people, you young Black folks to come to the front of the room. I want you to hear me, okay? I want you to hear what I'm saying. When Black people say we were better off doing Jim Crow, it shows you really don't understand history. And that statement is not just wrong, it's disrespectful. It's a slap in the face to the Black men and the Black women who fought and who were shot and stabbed and beaten and in prison and unalived during segregation and before that. To say we were better off back then is an insult to every Black leader who put their life on the line. So we wouldn't have to live like that anymore. I'm going to introduce you to a concept I want you to understand, and I learned this the first time I read Thurgood Marshall's book, okay? And it says that separate is inherently unequal. And this is an argument that he used in Brown versus the Board of Education in his argument before the Supreme Court. And it's one that they had developed all the way up through the appellate court level. Separate is inherently unequal. And a lot of Black people try to clean it up and say, I don't mean segregation. I mean, we were better off when we had our own towns and our own businesses, our own banks. Y'all heard him say that, right? Did y'all hear him say that? You heard the young people say we were better off when we had, they don't even know, right? They don't even know. Most of these young people don't even live around Black people. But that's what they said. But here's the problem. That wasn't segregation. That was forced separation under violence. And the oppressor kept destroying it every time Black people built something too successful until they were satisfied. You see? You understand? People keep using segregation when what they really mean is self-determination. Segregation is not independence. Segregation is not sovereignty. Segregation is second-class citizenship enforced by law and violence. And you can't separate segregation from Jim Crow. Segregation is going to bring forth second-class citizenship. Segregation is going to bring about legalized humiliation. And separate, as I said, is inherently unequal. And so the moment Black people say that they want segregation back, what they're really saying, whether they realize it or not, is that they're willing to accept second-class citizenship again, and they are asking to go back to the 1950s. Now let's paint an honest picture of what that looks like. All right? And let's be clear about something, family. Segregation wasn't just the South, it was everywhere. The South by law, the North by practice. In the 1950s, the average Black American lived in a second class citizen, surrounded by poverty. He was stressed out, fear, constant restriction, constantly told no, while watching white America enjoy this booming middle class that your tax dollars are paying for. In 1959, the official poverty rate for Black Americans was 55.1%. So let me tell you what that's like. Every time you bring groceries home, you got to feed somebody else. People are constantly coming to your house asking you for sugar. Let me borrow some milk. Watch my kids. Let me loan $5. Give me a ride here. Give me a ride there. See, you can't have nothing. All right? More than half the Black people that were around you were poor, not struggling, not a little poor, real poverty. That means everybody around you was broke. And you know what attitude people have when they broke? Everybody around you was hungry. They didn't have food. Every other person, look, they're nice. Your kids go hungry when they go to bed. When winter comes, you got to choose between heating gas for the house and bus fare to get to work. Shoes get passed down for years until they fall apart. Clothes don't fit. But you wear them anyway. Poverty doesn't come quietly. It brings stress. It brings arguments. It brings resentment. It brings pressure. Why you think our people be so angry with each other? You see, ever talk to some of these old people? And some of these family reunions, y'all keep talking about going to the cookout. I don't want to go to the cookout with them people. They don't like each other. They grew up poor. You understand me? They grew up poor. They mad at each other. They had to sleep in them little 1950 houses. They were mad at their parents because their parents were poor. Why we poor? Why them other people rich and we poor? Why we don't have nothing? Constantly fighting with each other, sharing clothes, angry. That's why your aunties don't get along. Yeah, you might be married, but what does a marriage feel like if you are constantly under financial stress? You got these kids hungry, you hungry, woman looking at the man like you not even a real man. She might not say it, but that's what she's thinking. You can't get a job because you locked out. You all know that financial stress is one of the biggest drivers of domestic conflict. So you got a wife who's frustrated. You got a husband who's drinking and cheating because he doesn't have an outlet. And nobody has any money anywhere. Everybody trapped. And this is the strong Black family that we keep romanticizing from the 1950s. The average Black man work as hard or harder than the average white man. And he earned 50 to 60% of what the white worker earned. Same job, same work day. The white man gets $1,000, he gets $600. Same hours, same labor, often a better performance. So ask yourself, is this how you want to live? Because that's how they were living. And even if you did have a job, you were picking, you were agriculture, you were porter, which means you running and fetching. You were a laborer, which means your back hurts, your shoulders hurt, your wrists hurt, your knees hurt, your feet hurt. Or you were down there on your knees shining shoes or cutting somebody's lawn. So Black men, here's your reality. Back then, you're an educator. You're an educated man. You probably went to one of the Negro colleges. You might even have an engineering degree. And you shining shoes with your engineering degree. You are well-spoken a servant. And your wife. She always looking at you side-eye. She married an engineer and you a shoe shine boy. She might be a trained nurse or a teacher. Went to a teacher college. Got great grades in high school. Gifted. But there are only so many jobs to go around at the black hospital and the black school. So she cleaning toilets for white folk. Degree in one hand and a toilet scrubber in another. Education just wasted. Maybe she sells fruit or they has some little small hustle on the side like sewing. But this is what we had jobs. This is what it looked like. And here's the other thing. If you weren't poor, you were unemployed, twice as much as white folk, and no help. You see? And let's not talk about housing. You had all these restrictive, you redlined, so you were stuck in the ghetto because you couldn't get a loan to move out the ghetto. So no matter how much money you made, you still lived in the ghetto. So you come home from work, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a school teacher, people smoking weed and cigarettes in the alley, drinking, fighting, gambling, shooting, playing loud music. Your wife, your daughters, your kids, they lived in that. Your sons grow up around criminals. Your daughters date thugs. They have to deal with thugs and catcalls. Your grandkids end up worse off than their ancestors because the people who they were around. And you had money, but you couldn't escape. And let's say you want to go and see a show or a movie or something, you downtown. You got to use the bathroom. You can't. You doing the P dance all the way down Main Street, passing up these clean white bathrooms until you find a dilapidated black restaurant or some hole-in-the-wall barbershop with one bathroom that smells like a sewer. That's where you got to go to the bathroom. And lo and behold, your wife is pregnant. You got a white hospital right down the street, but the black hospital is 30 miles away. Guess where you're going to be driving when she's in labor in your car? And hopefully it doesn't break down. But here's the cold part about it. If there's no black doctor on duty, you might get a wet nurse instead of a physician. And that's why black infant mortality was so high back then. That's why black women died during childbirth back then. It's still high now without segregation. Imagine how bad it was back then. When you talk about make America great again, and let's go back to the 1950s, we were better doing segregation. Hell, even after segregation was made illegal, we were still segregated. Black kids went to dilapidated buildings. You heard that nice elderly lady talk about the outdated textbooks she had and the old equipment. They were like 15 years behind the white folks. The white kids would purposely snatch the pages out the books because they knew they were going to the black kids. Nevertheless, so when it's time for college, you didn't qualify. You struggled to catch up. And the system designed that way. And here's another thing. Traveling, every time you left your house, every time someone you loved left your house, they had to worry about being targeted. That's why black families relied on something called the Negro Motorist Green Book. It was literally a green book to find places where they wouldn't be attacked or refuse service or unalived. There was no peace. You were always on edge. Okay? Crowded housing, poverty. Guess what that led to? Tuberculosis, pneumonia, disease. Black infant rate was double that of white people. You understand that? And hanging all over all of that, right? There was a threat of racial violence that kept you in your place. And this is what people want to go back to. So again, when you talk about we were better off doing Jim Crow, we were better off doing segregation. You want to go back to poverty? You want to go back to having your freedom restricted to where you can live and where you can drive? You want to go back to being humiliated? You want to go back to that danger? You want to go back to being treated like a secondhand citizen, being refused service even though you have the money? And whether you realize it or not, you're spitting on the sacrifices of people who fought so we wouldn't have to live like that ever again. And let me tell you something else, man. Here's the part that nobody seems to mention. During Jim Crow, Black people we were excluded from the public accommodations, right? You are aware of that, right? The whites only bathrooms, y'all know about that, right? Whites only bathroom, whites only water faucets and whatnot. But we still had to pay for them. Ain't that cool? We still had to pay for them. Our tax dollars, our federal and state tax dollars funded those white schools and funded those white hospitals and funded those white parks and those white neighborhoods and those white college educations and those white swimming pools, places where we were legally barred from using. You Black folks paid the same taxes. But you didn't get the same benefits, and you had no political power to stop it. You couldn't vote. You didn't elect the mayor. You didn't elect the city council. You didn't elect the judges. You didn't elect the sheriff. You didn't elect the tax collector. You didn't elect the congressman. You certainly didn't elect the president. But you paid for everything. See, segregation didn't just separate bathrooms and schools. It segregated the political system. Other people control your tax money. Your hard-earned money that you went out and made, you got to still pay taxes, and you got to support the people who are keeping you segregated from things you're paying for. While your communities are left underfunded on purpose. They literally take the money that should be allotted for you from your tax dollars and give it to white folk. Even if you were one of the few Black people earning serious money, you were equally taxed and unequally treated. If you hit the top bracket, you were subject to pay 91% marginal tax rate. And yet you still lived as a second-class citizen with no representation. That is taxation without representation. That's the reason this country, that's the reason it popped off in 1776 in the first place. So anyone saying that they want to go back to segregation either doesn't understand it or doesn't respect people who fought. So why would you want to do that again, family? Now again, let's go ahead and start wrapping this up, man. Let's go ahead and wrap this up, man. I need y'all to, because we started off talking about marriage, right? They said we were better off because we were married. That's where this conversation came from. We were better off married, so we was, that's what they say. The Charlie Kirk folk, they always throw Black people were better off. You were better because you had marriage. They don't say anything about the poverty. They don't say anything about how we were excluded, right? They trying to convince you Black folk that you were better off paying for the, living like we were living in the 1950s. Maybe white folk were doing good, but we were doing horrible. Okay? Let's just be mindful of that. I think I made that point. Now, when Black people say, or when people say Black people were better off during the 1950s because the marriage rates were high, that statement is wildly inaccurate and it's disrespectful because it ignores the poverty and the segregation and the dehumanization of second-class citizenship and the nonstop racial terror. To romanticize that period is to misunderstand what Black marriage actually was like. Do y'all know any of these old people? Have y'all met some of these old people? Have y'all heard the stories of the hot grease being thrown on people and the walking marriages and the husbands having families up the street and around the block? Did y'all not know what granddaddy was doing or great granddaddy? Yes, black families existed, but it existed primarily as a survival unit, not as a prosperity unit. Black husbands and black wives were bonded together under extreme pressure, chronic poverty, job discrimination, housing discrimination, political exclusion, and constant racial threat. That wasn't stability. That was shared survival under siege. Black households earned far less than white households and had almost no accumulated wealth. And by the 1950s, over 55% of black people lived in poverty. And even before the census formally tracked race-based poverty, it was clear that the majority of black families, married families, were economically crushed. Lower income, restricted jobs, segregated housing, and zero political power meant marriage didn't equal security. It meant pooling scarcity. So when someone says we were better off back then, what they're really saying is that they prefer a time when black families were married because they had no other choice, not because life was good. That wasn't family strength born of opportunity. It was family strength forged in oppression. And confusing survival with success dishonors the reality of our ancestors and what they lived to. Stop romanticizing the past and deal with reality, family. Okay? That's what you got to do. Stop shout out to Sonia Jack. Stop romanticizing the past and deal with reality. Most people romanticize the past for one simple reason. They were too young and innocent and ignorant to understand what was going on around them. They were sheltered from the harsh realities of the world they were actually living in. Parents carried the stress. Parents absorbed the fear. Parents dealt with the bills and the taxes, the war, the instability, while children remember bike rides, cartoons, and feeling safe. You see it happening right now. And I'm talking to the young people. You got a lot of these Generation Zs looking back at 2014 like it was some golden era. Meanwhile, in 2014, the United States was up to its eyeballs in war. We were entering the 14th year of the 13th year of the Iraq war, still fighting in Afghanistan. Terrorism was at all-time high. We were just crawling out of one of the worst recessions in modern history, and parents were stressed, taxes were high, wages were stagnant, but kids remember music and social media, not having adult responsibilities, so they confuse childhood comfort with national prosperity. That's the same thing is happening with this 1950s thing, making America great again. People romanticizing an era that ignored the racial terror, the segregation, the poverty, the violence, the second-class citizenship. And some people are comfortable doing that because they tell themselves, maybe it wouldn't have been me. But that's a lie. Everybody's affected by that system, whether you admit it or not. Here's the truth. You're not going back. Your black behind is going to stay right here with me, and we're going to move forward. And there's no need to keep looking behind you because you're not going there. Stay focused on the right here and the right now and make that the present the best it could be, because I guarantee you in 25 or 30 years from now, there'll be people romanticizing this moment right here, pretending 2026 was some magical time. And that's what people do. They escape into fantasy because they don't want to deal with the reality that's in front of them. That's called escapism. And it's the same reason people turn to dope. It's the same people overdrink. You get high, you feel good for a moment, and you come crashing down to the same reality you were trying to escape. Shout out to everybody who's popping shrooms and smoking weed right now. Excuse my language. But again, look, man, you know where you gonna come down and you're gonna be worse off than you were before. Or unfortunately, some of y'all might wake up in the hospital if you're out there throwing back shots, or you might wake up in the hospital handcuffed to a bed. See? So let's grow up. Stop fantasizing about the 1950s. Stop chanting "Make America Great Again" when you don't even understand what that means. The people who lived in the 1950s would look at 2026 and tell you flat out, America was not great back then. Progress has happened. Things have changed. They did the best they could with what they had, and you have way more than they ever dreamed of. And yet you're whining and jealous of people who have far less. The real issue isn't the time period. The truth is, many of you are just unhappy. And no matter what decade you lived in, you wouldn't be satisfied. Because happiness doesn't come from an era or a slogan or nostalgia. It comes from inside. And that means you got to do some inner work. And you need to go do it. I'm going to take the opportunity to read these super chats. We don't have a whole lot. I guess I didn't do a good job teaching y'all anything. I guess y'all knew everything that I was talking about today. So I only got 5 people who learned something. Shout out to the 5 people who learned something. Thank you so much, because I didn't earn but 5 super chats. But I appreciate you all, and I want to thank you all for that. So let me go ahead. Maybe we'll get 1 or 2 more before I finish reading. Let me give a shout out to everybody who contributed to the Cash App first. All right. I want to make sure I do that right now. Let's see who we got. We got 1 Cash App. Jamal Robinson, thank you so much, brother, for the $100. I appreciate you. We got 1 Cash App, and we got 5 super chats. Let's go ahead and read these super chats. Fire for Effect, thank you so much for the $9.99. Dennis Spurling, thank you so much. Appreciate you. That was me. I contributed. That ain't that crazy. I didn't think the Cash App was working. I had to contribute to myself. So really only got 4 super chats. Shout out to Downrange. Segregation will bring Jim Crow 2.0 1,000. You sure right. L. Jackson, thank you for the $19.99. And also Sonia 9694. Them folks discriminated among skin to further divide. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody who contributed to the super chat. Maybe we'll get some folk on a rebroadcast who learn something, and you'll contribute with a super heart or something like that. Or you can hit the Cash App up. But anyway, family, we're not gonna hold you up too much longer. Did y'all learn something? Really though, I just need to know. Did you learn something? If you did learn something that you didn't know, hit the number 1 button. I just want to know. Okay. If this is the type of broadcast you like, just let me know. Okay. I felt like this was timely, because I saw this whole, we were better off doing segregation, which is, code word. That's the black version of Make America Great Again. That's all that it is. And I said, well, I need to address that. I think it's important we address that. Did you learn something about the true history of marriage in America? You realize it went up and it's going back down to its baseline. Did y'all realize that? Huh? Did you guys see where I went with that? In 1880, wasn't that much, right? Not as much as it was in 1960. And then it went up and then it went down. Did you see that? So now the next time people say things were so much better way back when? How far back are you talking about? Because if you go back past the 1960s, it was pretty much the same as it is right now, the marriage rate. Marriage was not that common, right? Did you learn something on that? I mean, even if you don't, you ain't got to give me a dime. I'm just saying, sometimes I'm being humorous with you all, and I appreciate the super chats and I appreciate the Cash App, but it's more important for you to take this information and go hit folk upside the head with it, especially on the internet. The next time people say something like we were better off doing segregation, say that is just black speak for Make America Great Again. And then you ask them, but for who? Okay, because back that time, it wasn't great for us. Yes, we were married, but everybody was married more because people could afford to get married. And the reason they could afford to get married is because people had jobs. People had jobs because companies need people to manufacture things, because we were literally servicing the world because the rest of the world was smashed to crap. And then competition showed up in the 1960s and 70s. And then we had competition. So we had to lower less people got jobs. It's a very simple concept to understand. All right. And so as far as the marriage, great. And when you start looking into the meat of what was actually going on in the 1950s, how many of y'all want to live in a 900 square foot house? One of those cheap houses they had back in the 50s. How many of you all want to drive one of those buckets that they had back then where you can die in one of them? How many of y'all want to live like that? 900 square foot house, no walk-in closets, and a bucket with no air conditioning in the summer. This is what life was like. Huh? How many of you all want to pay up to 91% in taxes just because you got rich? How many of you all want to do that? Do you really want to do that? Do you really want to make America great again? You want the government to subsidize? You paying anyway. Money don't grow on trees. You're going to pay anyway. All right? So anyway, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up, man. I got a couple more things to say before I slide on up out of here. Look, what I guess really what I want to do, family, is I just kind of want to leave y'all with a warning. All right. And it's some old wisdom that I'm sure you've heard before, you know, some I raised off of. And basically, you know, white supremacists have always been good at giving black people exactly what they asked for. All right, whether we talk about the 1991 crime bill or 1994 crime bill, when we said we need to stop all this crime, and remember they did that? Joe Biden and Bill Clinton got together. They stopped crime all right, and they stopped black progress too. You see? They give us exactly what we asked for, and then they stand back while we suffer the consequences. History is full of examples where we begged for something and demanded something or romanticized something, only to realize too late that we should have never asked for that in the first place. You need to understand, when you say we were better off segregated, or you flirt with make America great again, you're doing the job, you're doing their work for them. You telling people who've never had your best interest at heart that you're willing to accept less rights and less power, less protection, and less dignity, as long as they wrap it in nostalgia and tell you a bedtime story about the past. Shout out to B Hunter, the spot. We got 6 super chats. If we can get to 10, that'll be a win, okay? But you need to be careful what you ask for, because if segregation comes back, it will not be the fake, cleaned up version you imagine in your head. It will not be black businesses and tight families and community pride. It will be straight up humiliation. It'll be political powerlessness. It'll be economic exclusion, which means you can't get a loan, you can't get a home loan, you can't get a car loan, and it'll be straight up police state violence, no recourse. And once you get it, there's not going to be a reset button. It's not going to be an apology. It's not going to be an Uno reverse. It's not going to be an undo. It's not going to be a oops, we made a mistake. White supremacists don't have to force it on you if you dumb enough to request it yourself. And that's the cold hard truth, man. And some of you are not actually nostalgic. You're just unhappy. You're dissatisfied with your life. You're frustrated with the present. Instead of doing the hard work of fixing it or fixing what's in front of you, you want to escape into fantasy where responsibility disappears and someone else takes control. That's not history. That's avoidance. And sometimes when you get what you ask for, you realize too late that you never wanted it at all. So stop asking to go backwards. Stop glamorizing suffering. Stop disrespecting our people who fought so hard to get us out of that position to where we are now. Okay? And most importantly, stop handing your future over to people who've already shown you over and over again exactly what they'll do with it. Now, that being the case, you've been warned. God bless you. I love you all. This is Uncle D, and as I always say at this time, I'm out.
In the Spurling podcast, hit the like button, subscribe.